The reality is that this mob promised that they would drop prices by $2.75. They didn't just win an election, they grew despite the failure to deliver on that promise. They don't even think they have to even hint at prices going down, and there's even the potential of sort of artificial measures which have affected inflation, like some of these rebates may well disappear. I just want to ask the sort of the kernel of the political question here, which is why don't people blame the government for lying about making things better when their policies make things worse? Because it's not like we haven't been talking about it for every day since this bloke became Prime Minister.
Australians have a lot of goodwill, Paul, and generally they want and expect their government to do well. But I think they are taking a backward step now and looking at this Prime Minister who for 2 elections said your power prices will come down. You heard the $275 many times. The reality is they've gone up $1,300. And these costs, it's cost $75 billion to get to where we are. You know, reliability is going down, prices are going up, emissions are flatlining. So the job is not being done. And the Business Council says to get to their 2035 targets, it's going to cost another $530 billion. And that includes $150 billion going offshore and doing the manufacturing somewhere else. That's not helping the planet. But what it is doing is hurting Australian businesses. So as I travel around, I am hearing a real sense of disappointment in this Prime Minister and this government, who just has not explained to Australians what's going on. And my question to the Prime Minister is, when are the prices coming down? It's a simple question. We'll be asking it next week in Parliament. When are the prices for electricity coming down?
Very fair. Now, I want to talk about things that are not about net zero. Goodness, we talk about something else for a second here, right? But something that I mentioned post-election, something you mentioned post-election, and something that was very obvious, right, is that the machine that is the Liberal Party clearly didn't fire the way that it was hoped by those of us who didn't vote for this government. So can you give me an idea? While we've had all this conversation about what the policy on this and where we're on that, what is the conversation happening behind the scenes to make sure that the people who represent the party look like the people who are voting potentially in elections? How is there processes to make sure that you pick those people in the next 6 months, not 2 weeks before an election? Give me an idea about some of the behind the scenes that is being fixed as a result of the failures in May.
2 things, Paul, after a loss like the one we had is what went wrong. So the campaign review is going to be presented soon, and it will be frank and fearless because I've asked it to be, and it will be made public. What went wrong in the campaign? Because clearly quite a few things did. The next question is, how do we make the modern Liberal Party fit for the future, a fighting force where people join the party to participate in the contest of ideas because they believe in what we believe in: aspiration, enterprise, freedom, choice, reward for effort, all of the things that have underpinned the policies and approach that I've outlined so far. Living within our means, delivering lower taxes via personal income tax cuts at the next election, fixing the crazy industrial relations system that is of no benefit to employers or employees. So how do we attract people who are part of, if you like, our tribe? Every Liberal Party member knows that moment in their life. I certainly do, when I realised this was my party, this was my agenda, this was what I wanted to fight for a better Australia. So there is a longer term review, and it is looking at these structures. And joining in that are all of our state divisions, because the Liberal Party is not one federated structure where everything is decided at the top. We're very democratic. So every state division is responsible for, as you say, getting the right candidates pre-selected for the seats that we know we must win to be contestable at the next election. We've got great people in our state divisions. They've taken on the challenge. They will look at the review that I talked about the last campaign, and the recommendations will be adopted. So I'm optimistic about the path forwards.
So what about social media? I mean, you know that from when you first entered the parliament to where we sit today, how you respond to a government, how you sell the ideas that you have has well and truly changed. Now, you've got to do everything you did in 2001 plus a whole bunch more in the second quarter of the 21st century. And social media is a big part of that game. We saw what Labor did when Jess Wilson, someone in their mid-30s, the perfect example of the supposed modernisation that is desperately needed by the Liberal Party, yet the very first thing they come out with, cuts. Because we have this scenario where, unless you agree with every dollar of spending and how it is spent, the amplification of things like social media and the lies that can be told on social media by every element of the Labor Party over and over and over again, it kills you before day one. So how does the Liberal Party get smarter and fitter in the areas that aren't television and radio?
I agree, Paul. We have to get smarter and fitter at meeting modern Australians where they are on social media, online, on whatever platform they're choosing. So we have to use the traditional methods of talking to people, if you like, but also the ones that we might not personally engage in so much. That is absolutely vital. But, you know, when I talk to young people, they all talk about their values, and I know that we can appeal to them with those values. They talk about simple things like wanting to own their own home and how they can't see under this government a pathway to owning their own home. And I say to them, I don't want Generation Z and millennials to inherit a lower standard of living than I have. And that's really important in the agenda that we're putting forwards. And I think that I would call this generation disenfranchised, because it's as if for this Labor Party, it somehow doesn't matter, when it should be the central proposition of every policy. How do we make sure that the next generations inherit a higher standard of living, good jobs, good opportunities, not just more debt, but most importantly, the opportunity to own their own home?
Susan Lee, good to talk to her from Melbourne a little bit earlier this evening.